Oregon's got me thinking about Jaws right now.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Lots coming on today's show. The linebacker room, one of the most exciting on this team, and there's a coach in the Oregon Athletic Department who needs to be extended yesterday, and I hope that's in the cards. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, Oregon on the recruiting trails like Jaws. You know how the music starts really slow and dramatic? Dun-dun, dun-dun, and then it slowly gets faster. We're maybe still in the first couple of beats there. I don't know if I'd call them a dun-dun because, well, that's just not the right word, and I know it, but I'm not that musically inclined, or at least not anymore. I was when I was a kid. Anyway, so right now, Oregon's just kind of circling. They're circling. I think they're setting the stage because they've got another commitment in the class of 2027, not 26. That's why I say it hasn't accelerated to the next sheet of music where it starts to pick up the tempo, right? You're just starting, but you got people's attention because all of a sudden it was quiet, and then within 36 hours, maybe even less than that, math is hard, Oregon's picked up a couple of four-star commits in the class of 2027. Yesterday was Prince Tavazon. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Today, Cameron Pritchett, defensive lineman from Alabaster, Alabama. And those of you that are Modern Family fans, I'm not talking about the character personified, but this person is significantly more athletic than Cam on Modern Family, of course. But 6'3", 241 pounds. Both these guys have very similar, or 231 pounds rather, pretty similar builds. Tavazon is 6'3", 245. And Pritchett is 6'3", 231. Now, of course, they have a couple of years of high school left, so their bodies might look different by the time they get to Oregon. I especially think that's true for Pritchett, but he's the number 170 ranked player overall in 24/7's rankings, regardless of position, and the number 21 overall edge prospect, picking Oregon over Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, and Clemson. And that's something I am a big fan of looking at when you evaluate what to expect from a recruit. Who else wanted him? You know, Jared Curtis obviously picked Georgia, but it was down to Oregon and Georgia, and a bunch of other schools have been involved when a guy picks Oregon, and it's, the other schools were Georgia, Alabama, USC. Yeah, the guy's probably a pretty big-time recruit. Tennessee, Auburn, Florida State, Clemson, pretty big heavy hitters on the recruiting trail there. And for Oregon to go into Auburn's backyard in the state of Alabama and pull out a kid like Cameron Pritchett, solid pull, really solid pull. The reason I say his body shape in particular, or kind of his frame, could be a lot different. I don't know that these guys will keep growing. It can happen, has happened before, but when I watch his highlights, which are somewhat hard to come by, but if you know where to look, you can find them as well. I see a lot of Jordan Burch. I see a lot of Jordan Burch, the way that he gets off the ball and then just converts into a power rush really quickly. I think is really impressive, and he's a couple inches shorter than Jordan Burch. He doesn't weigh quite as much. I see a little bit of Brandon Dorlus in him as well, with the way he's able to use his hands and just the technical aspect that he brings to the line of scrimmage. But overall, these are a couple of really, really solid pickups. And this is feeling, still early, of course, especially for the class of 2027, this is very much starting to feel like that 2023 class that had 10 players along the defensive line. 10. Oregon's already sitting here at 2. Now, I have long suspected the defensive line would be a big priority in the class of 2026. Not that they haven't had talented guys in the last couple cycles, particularly 2025. I thought it might be more of an emphasis. Maybe they're going to push that off again to 2027. Maybe. But I think that this staff, every few years, you're not going to do it every season or every cycle, of course, but every few years, I think they'll have an 8 to 10 lineup or volume wise, they'll have 8 to 10 defensive linemen. I think that's just kind of the way that they want to build the program, the way that they know how to recruit and can recruit at a high level. Tosh Lupoy recruiting defensive linemen. That's a combination that goes together like peanut butter and jelly. So a really nice start for next year's recruiting class, but Oregon's just circling. They're just popping up on the radar. Everything was quiet. Then the Richard Wesley thing was great. And then the Richard Wesley thing wasn't as great. I continue to think he'll wind up back at Oregon eventually. He'll just go through the visit process first. But this weekend, Oregon is having one of the top receivers in the class of 2026 on campus for a visit in Calvin Russell. 6'5", 190 pounds, rated by, it depends on which metric or which service rather you look at, top 5 receiver in the class of 2026. And don't forget, this is an offseason where Oregon has had a change at receiver coach going from Junior Adams, who went to the Cowboys, to Ross Douglas. And I like Ross Douglas. His track record coming over from Syracuse, really, really good on the field. From a recruiting standpoint, don't think we have a full picture of what he can be or what we should expect from him at that position, because Junior Adams set the bar higher than any receiver coach in the history of Oregon football, number one. And number two, at Syracuse, you just don't have the same ability recruiting-wise as you do at Oregon. So now that he recruited kids poorly over there, but did he go out and have just these barn buster recruiting classes with the receivers? No, he didn't. So this cycle, I think, is a really big one for him, because Oregon, since Dan Lanning took over, I think the two position groups they have recruited the best and most consistently. They've had great guys at every position. I think defensive line is number one. I'd probably put wide receiver at number two. And because of the 2025 class, defensive back would probably be in there at number three. So as I said yesterday on the show, and have been pointing out, my everydayers know for many weeks, June's a big month. Oregon's recruiting class ranks 27th nationally in the 24/7 rankings. That is lower than it has ever been with a meaningful amount of time having passed in the cycle at any point in the Dan Lanning era. I have not been covering the Ducks on this show, gotten to June, and Oregon been outside the top 25. Hasn't happened yet. And I still expect Oregon to get a top 10 class, because they're just none. Okay, I'll stop with the Jaws music, but you get the idea. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. There's still a ton to get to on today's show, because I really like this linebacker room for more than one reason. First, this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is indeed easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is not just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start actually building wealth. All-in-one convenience is what they are all about, and that's what you should want as well, because you don't want to juggle multiple apps and have everything just piecemeal all over the place. You can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. You do it all in one place. That's why you need to go check them out. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off of your first year. monarchmoney.com. Long travel day for me today. Not that long, but a travel day makes the second segment sip even more important. So let's talk about the linebacker room, because I like this room. I really, really do. And I'm just going to remind you, when I hand out my position group grades, I'm a tough grader. Tough grader. Very, very hard. It is hard to get even a B or above. If I give you an A, which I have given to the defensive line in the receiver room, it means you're doing a lot of things at an incredibly high level, which they, of course, have done. Stoked for the defensive line room. Excited to see what the secondary is, but there are two reasons that I really like the Oregon linebacker room. Number one, I know what I have at the top, and I feel good about it. That's a great thing to be able to say. At literally any position group, The secondary, for instance, which I'll tell you right now, I do not grade as highly as the linebacker room for that very reason. I've got one guy in there who I know what I'm getting. I am excited. I'm thrilled, quite frankly, to watch Oregon and see what they do with the secondary, how they can develop, and what they could be going into 2026, or frankly, towards the second half of the season. You're just working in a bunch of new guys. I think Ifeoma Degwu could be an absolute stud. He had the forced fumble in the spring game, of course, and just overall really looks the part. But when I don't know, it's hard for me to say, oh, yeah, that's an A-, that's a B+. Like, no, you got to show me something first. The top of the linebacker room has shown me something. Bryce Boettcher was the highest graded linebacker that Oregon had on the roster last season, and he's going to be starting alongside Devin Jackson. It's hard to get a more experienced top of the depth chart than those two guys. Boettcher's going into his final year of college football. Didn't have to come back, but he did. He said, yeah, the Rose Bowl was absolutely a part of that it left a sour taste in his mouth. He's not the only one. And Devin Jackson is going into, amazingly, his fourth year as a Duck. Fourth year as a Duck. And those are going to be your starters. I don't think I can foresee a scenario where those two guys are not at the top of the depth chart. They're not the only ones that matter a whole heck of a lot. And that's the second reason why I'm excited for this room. Because when guys get recruited, and I feel this even more because I talk about every player that Oregon gets here on the show and then follow their career, and you look for tidbits and little moments, or hear rumors or reports, or see things in a spring game, or see a garbage time moment and go, whoa, that guy could be really good. But when young guys get the opportunity to play, which we're going to see a lot this year, this fires me up. Like, one of the games that excited me most last year was Kenyon Sadiq when Terrence Ferguson was out against Purdue and Sadiq was the number one tight end. And I was just watching him going, this is what we foresaw. This is what we knew this guy could be. Look at, he's running across half the field, running away from the entire secondary. Tight ends don't do that. He does because he's a freak of nature, of course, in the best way. But you have got veteran, proven experience that are good players. They have not, been garnering a bunch of all-conference selections throughout the course of their career, but I know what Devin Jackson is, which is one of the best athletes on the team. I know what Bryce Boettcher is, which is one of the smartest and just most instinctually solid players on the team on either side of the ball. And then behind him, you've got a collection of second-year guys and one third-year player. So I thought, based on what the information we got during spring, Jerry Mixon, to me, looked the most like the guy who winds up being the number 3 linebacker there. But make no mistake about it, you need to have 4. I wouldn't say you need to have 5. I'd like to have 5 guys you feel good about, but Oregon needs to have 4 backers that they can rely on. You look at last season, for instance. You had Boettcher and you had Jackson, who were kind of, alternating the number 2 spot with Jeff Bossa, who was number 1, but Jeff Bossa got hurt. And that's where you needed Justin Jacobs to be there, the one-time Iowa transfer who was in his second season. So, you lose Bossa, you lose Jacobs, you got to replace both of those guys. I think you're going to see a lot of snaps from Bryce Boettcher and Devin Jackson, but you're going to see a sizable amount from one of, I think it'll be Jerry Mixon, but it could be Braden Platt, it could be Kamar Mathudi, it could be Dylan Williams. I don't think it'll be Gavin Nix, the true freshman, just because we haven't seen it. Linebacker is one of those spots that's tough to play as a true freshman. Justin Flo did it. Noah Sewell did it. Those guys were both 5-star recruits, and I like the way Oregon has recruited this room. But this is now, as Coach B. Mike said to Tristan Phillips, or no, he said Tristan Phillips referenced it when he was here on the show. But Brian Michalowski, the linebackers coach, said during spring ball, like, what does it say about me if we need to bring in a transfer? Like, I got to be able to develop these guys. Well, here's a big time opportunity. So I think Jerry Mixon in his third season is going to be that guy. Was not a super highly rated recruit, but man, you go back and watch the plays where he made an impact in the spring game, looks the part. He kind of pops off the screen a little bit in some ways, more than Bryce Boettcher does, and kind of in the same way Devin Jackson does. So I think he's pretty clearly your number 3. Who's going to be in the fold? I mean, you might have that might be a battle that goes on continually during fall camp and maybe even throughout the season. Because I think all three of those 4-star guys that are now in their second season, Mathuti, Platt, and Williams, I think they've all looked solid. I don't think any one of them have looked, exceptionally great or just incredibly dominant. Oh my gosh, this guy's way better than the other guy. Like, no, I think they all just look solid, capable. Nothing wrong with that. For, a third or fourth string linebacker, that's a pretty good place to be. So I think that this room, has got so much intrigue to it, but not in the same sense the secondary does, where it's, I don't know what I'm getting here, but I hope it's good. On paper, it's good, but I know what I've got at the top, and I know that that's good. And you're getting the opportunity to work the young guys into the fold, which is going to matter, of course, a lot for next year, because Devin Jackson could return. Pretty sure he'll be a redshirt junior this year, and so next year would be his final season of college football, unless he really pops and has an all-conference caliber season. But, I felt the same way about this room coming out of spring as I did going into the spring, and that's giving it a B-. And that's, again, tough grader over here. I am not of the modern grading world where C's are something that are terrible or bad. Like C+, solid unit. B-, I think you're pretty solidly above average here. Do you have a high-end NFL draft pick? No. That's how you get, further up the ranks and such. But Jackson could be that guy. Jackson is the guy who I think could pop. We're hoping, Bryce Boettcher is the same guy he was last year. He gives you the same production he did last season. You're going to feel good about that. Devin Jackson, I think, is the most important player in the room because he's clearly one of your 2 starting linebackers, and he's got to be able to, play better than he did at times last year. His PFF grade wasn't blowing anybody away. I think he played better than that pretty consistently from what I saw throughout the year. But he needs to not just be a guy who's solid. He's got to be an impact player. He's got to go out and make those plays that Jeff Bossa made him be a tackling merchant all over the field. So I'm really excited to watch that group. Really, really excited because feel good about what you've got at the top. Feel good about what you have behind, but there's still an element there. There's a mystery. There's an intrigue there with that unit. So certainly the ability for Brian Michalowski and the defensive staff to develop at this position will be on full display this year. Can't wait to watch all of that. So as always, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you think that between Platt, Williams, and Mathuti have stood out, like I think they've all just looked solid, let me know. Let me know how you get there, because I'm just kind of like, yeah, all look solid, but I don't think one is. Mixon stood out to me in the spring and more than all the other ones, all the way back in April. How did that go by so quickly? I don't know. But are you aware of an extension for a coach on campus that must take place now? I am, and I'm going to tell you about it. I hope this point is so obvious that it doesn't even need to be said to anybody within the Oregon athletic department. It should be plainly obvious after what we just watched, but Melissa Lombardi needs an extension. Her contract runs through next year, and that's it. Just put together her first trip to the Women's College World Series, was one of the final 5 teams in the entire sport. Yeah, I have faith that there's going to be news on that front. There hasn't been yet. I was frankly surprised, maybe not shocked, but I was a little surprised that the contract was is set to expire next year. But when you go out and have your best season to date in version 7, you're gonna make a commitment there. So I don't know if any of you saw, but Patty Gasso, who is the not going to be a 5-time champion, Oregon has somehow gotten out of the habit of losing to the eventual national champion in the postseason environments. Well, they lost to Ohio State, so I guess not entirely. Like I said, not entirely, but somewhat gotten out of that habit. They've done it a lot, and I mean a lot over the years in a variety of sports. Northwestern for women's golf. Kiara Romero, by the way, played awesome at the U.S. Women's Open. Shout out. Oregon basketball's done it a couple times. They lost to Virginia when they won it all. Lost to Louisville when they won it all. So anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. Back on point. Melissa Lombardi the broadcaster was referring to a lot as Missy Lombardi. She's an awesome coach. But Oklahoma's head coach, Patty Gasso, had Coach Lombardi on as an assistant for like 2 decades or something, for a very long time. And so she likes and respects her. But I think she got asked, Patty Gasso did, about the lack of contract extension there for Missy Lombardi. And I mean, she wasn't ripping into the Oregon athletic department, but she was kind of making this point and had this, I think, correct tone of like, if you don't invest in Coach Lombardi, you're doing it wrong. This is someone you want. This is someone who's doing it the right way and doing all sorts of good things. Of course, she's a little bit biased, but it's also hard to pretty argue with the words she was saying when you watch what has happened to the program since Coach Lombardi took it over. And you know, for all the postseason shortcomings, it's felt like Oregon has had in calendar year 2025. You know, women's golf getting to the Final Four, coming up just a little bit short. Football losing to Ohio State. Men's basketball had a big lead, couldn't hold against Arizona. Women's basketball almost beat Duke. Like, this was the most successful postseason run that any Oregon sports team has had this year. Women's golf, you can put up there too. They've been there before. That doesn't mean it wasn't wildly successful, of course. They'd been there before. This program had not. And they're losing a healthy amount of seniors, and I'm sure the roster will look plenty different. There are a lot of young, exciting players on the roster, and what I hope, and one of the reasons I'm talking about it today is because Coach Lombardi deserves the recognition for the job she's done, and people should know, like, yeah, she should be extended and given a raise as well from, you know, whatever the contract was before. But I think what, you know, she accomplished this year more than anything with Oregon hosting a regional and a super regional. Shout out to Liberty for beating Texas A&M. Let's play Liberty in every postseason, by the way. That always goes really, really well. I think she brought a lot of Oregon fans into the sport. I call softball for Southern Utah. It's a great sport. SU doesn't have baseball, so I kind of get that fixed from a broadcasting standpoint with softball. And before I graduated college, and when I graduated college, I'd actually never called the sport before, but I've been around it for my 5 years as a play-by-play announcer. It's fantastic. It's really, really fantastic. If you're a baseball fan, I promise you can get into softball, because there are, of course, a lot of similarities, but the strategy is very different. It's really exciting, and this was a really, really exciting Oregon team. Not just because they had, you know, back-to-back walk-offs in the regional and super regional, both by Des Patman, who's an absolute stud. I don't know why she bunts so much, but I never want to see her bunt. I want to see her swing the bat because she's got plenty of pop. But I think that there were plenty of people, and I saw them on TV or talked to them. Some of you are the listener watch out there have said, yeah, man, I was following the run. It was great. It was awesome, man. It was a really fun season. And I've seen people online saying that sort of thing. But I also watched Jane Sanders Stadium in the postseason structure in this postseason setting rather, and it's packed. And that's awesome. I think that is phenomenally awesome, because you start to miss Oregon sports, right? That's why many of you tune into this show. I feel, not that I don't enjoy covering recruiting. I do. Because Oregon is the shark in the water right now. They're just getting ready. I don't think that dorsal fin is quite over the water, but it's getting ready to surface like a submarine scope. And then once it does, Oregon's gonna be up. They're gonna be out there hunting for chow. But fundamentally, like, it's just fun. It's just fun. It was really, really fun to watch this team, to see that stadium be so exciting, to see, you know, the athletes getting the credit and attention and love from the fans that they deserve. It's awesome. I think it's awesome. And certainly, you know, with success comes expectations, because many years ago, think about it for Coach Lombardi's counterpart, Mark Wazakowski, many years ago, it would have been disappointing, but not a flop, as I described it accurately on yesterday's show, to host a regional and go 0-2. It would have been, hey, it was so cool to host a regional. But eventually you want to see that step. You want to see that progression, right? Now Coach Lombardi and her staff have got to sink their teeth into recruiting, hit the transfer portal, and figure out how they can put together a roster that can get back to the Women's College World Series. It's not an easy thing to do. And next year, the path is probably going to be more difficult because you're going to have a younger team. We'll see who they bring in via the portal. Lindsey Grine was a transfer this year. That worked out incredibly well. But you'll have whatever regional situation you wind up with. The odds that you aren't playing a nationally ranked team again in the super regionals, probably pretty low. They caught a break this year. They took advantage of it, as they should have. That's what great teams do. And they trounced Liberty in the second game after beating them in the first game. So I'm not trying to take away from that, but it never just, automatically sustains itself. You see this with Oregon football, right? Dan Lanning goes out and wins 10 games and wins 12 games. And how does he come back with a roster that can go out and win 13 games in Big Ten championship? You get to work. So Rob Mullins and the rest of the athletic department got to get together and get Coach Lombardi an extension. Then they got to get to work. But awesome season. Super fun to watch. Love talking about it here on the show. And I like spring sports. I really, really do. I hope many of you do as well. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.